Hello and welcome to this Eureka webinar in association with Southco. My name is Paul Fanning and I'm editor of Eureka. Today's presentation is entitled Compression Latches Explained, and it is with Jonathan Coulter, Global Product Manager for Southco. I'll shortly hand over to Jonathan, but before I do, I should just say that if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the box on the right-hand side of your screen. And we will attempt to answer them at the end. If we don't have time to answer them at the end, we will hand them on to Southco and they can answer them for you offline. And with that, it just remains for me to hand over to Jonathan. Jonathan, please take it away.
Thanks, Paul, for the introduction. As Paul said, my name is Jonathan Coulter, and I'm a Global Product Manager at Southco. And I'm very excited today to share with you some thoughts about compression latches, the different functions that create compression, as well as some of the design considerations to make a product selection for your application. But before I do, I'd like to share a little bit of information about Southco. Southco is the recognized leading global manufacturer and designer of access hardware. Now, what is access hardware? Those are the things that our customers use to open and close, latch, secure, lock, and position their applications for their customers. Now, Southco has 15 different global locations, including design, manufacturing, and shipping locations around the world. We make what we call our customers' touch points, which are those unique aspects which allow them to differentiate their applications from their competition. Southco offers over 100,000 standard products online and in our handbook, which means they're ready to be purchased today. And we also have a wide variety of custom products that we uniquely tailor to specific customers' needs. Speaking of customers, we have over 150,000 customers globally and really service the top 10 customers or more in almost every industry. And with our exceptional staff of field and sales agents and customer service, we can answer your questions in your time zone and in your language. So with our international footprint and worldwide coverage, we like to say we can be your local customer or local partner globally. Okay, if you review our website and have any further questions on either applications or what we talk about today, I'll provide contact information at the end for you to call us directly so we can answer your specific application needs. But now let's go on to compression. Okay, first of all, we want to define what is compression latch. Well, a compression latch is a simple mechanical device which holds moving doors to fixed panels. Now, what do they do this for? Because typically these things like to rattle and make noise during vibration, or compression latches are very great at sealing out the inside from the outside to keep the sensitive electronics inside your enclosure safe from the environment outside. Now, as you can see from the images on the right, compression latches come in lots of sizes and form factors. Some appear to be flush, some have handles, some are key locking, and some are non-locking or padlocking. And we'll discuss how these work in the specific application recommendations in the next few slides. But all compression latches do perform the same function: stop vibration and noise and seal out the outside from the inside of your enclosure. And because of their function, they're mostly used on applications that move or vibrate, such as off-highway trucks or tractors, railways and buses, and enclosures with sensitive equipment, whether it be HVAC, electrical equipment, or industrial machinery. So before we get into talking about the different compression latch mechanisms, let's review some of the application requirements and terminology to make sure we're all grounded on the same page. So first of all, some of the questions you might ask your customers when trying to figure out what compression latch they should use are some of these here. So what environment will your latch or application see? Will it be under a constant vibration from a motor load, or maybe a sudden or distinct impact for shock load? The former can speak to how well your application or latch can hold up over time, and the latter can speak to how strong that latch is to withstand certain and sudden impacts. Also, the environment is very important. Will your latch be on an indoor application, which typically don't see a lot of weather or wind or rain? Or will it be outdoors where it is subject to wind and dust and blowing rain as well? Will your application be outside in the sun? We all know that UV exposure can sometimes affect materials and degrade them more quickly. Or will your application be seeing either chemical cleaners or chemicals themselves and need to withstand that kind of corrosive material? And more importantly, really, sealing. For latches that are on the inside, sealing are really not that important. The materials could be chosen which are a little more economical and not need to withstand corrosion or keep out the outside. But if your latch is outside and is subject to high winds and driving rain, sealing becomes very important then as a consideration. Next, we'll talk about security. If you're opening an application or entering an enclosure multiple times every hour, maybe you'd like a non-locking version for ease of access over a security function. But if you're going to leave your application temporarily or maybe in an area where you're not so sure, potentially a tool might be more beneficial, something the common person wouldn't carry in their pocket, but it's not specifically coded uniquely to the application like a car key might be. However, if your application may sit out overnight for long periods of time, you may want exactly that, a coded key specific to your application that the common customer can't purchase online or find at a store. And finally, you may desire the capability to padlock your latch. This is useful, for example, if you need to tag out some equipment for maintenance or security and therefore prevent the normal tool or key from opening that latch or lock. So these factors help you narrow down your suggestion or recommendation for an absolute compression latch for your application. So moving forward, there's some terminology we want to cover to make sure we're on the same page. First, we'll talk about fixed or variable compression. We need to define a term. On the right image in the upper corner, you see a latch installed in a panel with a grip dimension defined. Grip is basically the distance that a compression latch can squeeze close. So in this example, you see the latch is installed in a moving panel, and the top of the grip is the top of that panel. And what's providing the compression is the lever arm at the bottom of that latch. And the distance between the top of that panel and the top of the lever arm is called the grip. Now, if your application has fairly strict manufacturing tolerances, or you don't have a gasket that may settle over time, you might use a fixed grip latch, which this is. It just means the latch itself is good for a grip value, a very narrow grip value. However, if you have manufacturing tolerance issues or you're worried about gasket set or application sag over time, you may want an adjustable grip latch. And that replaces that fixed cam you see on the image on the right with a shaft and a cam and hardware that can move up and down to provide adjustable grip depending on the application needs. That allows you to use one potential compression latch in multiple uses on the same application. Next, we'll talk about industry regulations. Certain industries require compliance to some third-party rating agencies for their applications. For example, you see NEMA and IP are two rating services which judge the sealability of your latch to withstand intrusion of dust and moisture. There are also some specific European requirements for certain industries. For example, if you are in a train industry, you may have a requirement to meet a certain fire requirement, or if you have a food processing machine, you may want to meet a certain hygienic requirement as well. And Underwriters Labs also has a third-party rating service for latches specifically for electrical enclosures. So if you're a manufacturer of electrical enclosure and you must meet a certain UL rating, then you want also your hardware to meet the same rating as well. And if you can offer that, like Southco can, then you're one leg closer to certifying your entire application. Another consideration which may impact the feature selection of your compression latch is its intrusion or protrusion. If you have an application where you want the outside to be very flush and to not come in contact with clothes as you walk by or potentially branches as you drive your tractor through a field, you may want a latch with very little protrusion and a flush exterior. Conversely, if you have sensitive electronic equipment inside your enclosure, you may not want the latch to stick in too far and then interact with that electrical equipment. So you want something with very little intrusion. Or in the example you see in the middle image, you may want something that mounts entirely the outside of the panel and doesn't intrude at all. This is just another consideration when looking at different mechanisms to provide compression. And finally, there's a concern on whether you want to actuate your latch. You may want to actuate one latch in your application in the clockwise fashion, and maybe another latch in the same application in the counterclockwise fashion. Or perhaps you want it to be universal either way. So the handed operation is another consideration you may take into consideration when you're making a recommendation for your latches. Okay, now that we've discussed some of the terminology and some of the application requirements, let's go talk about the functional mechanisms that provide compression. Now, there are a lot of different mechanisms and form factors to make compression, but to make it easy, I like to bin them into 5 basic categories. And those categories are quarter turn compression latches, lever compression latches, external mount lever latches, lift and turn lever latches, and self-adjusting compression latches. Each one of these provides compression in a slightly different mechanism, and we'll talk briefly now about what the differences are. So first, the quarter turn family. As the name implies, these latches operate by using a simple rotation motion on the head, which provides 2 interesting functions of the latch itself. As you rotate the head or driver of the latch, the cam underneath the keeper of the fixed panel rotates a quarter turn, and then you get a second function pulling that cam forward to provide compression. This is one of the most popular types of compression latches on the market today, and therefore has the widest variety of offerings, including versions, sizes, materials, and shapes. And because of their construction, they're very easy to make sealed. So they're very good to protect the weather outside from your application on the inside. And because they come in fixed and adjustable grips, it's very easy to find one part number that might meet many application requirements on the same equipment. And they're very sturdy and resistant to demand and to application demand when there's high vibration and shocks. They're very good to stay in place. Those are the quarter turn compression latches. The next bucket is the lever compression latches. And as you can see from the pictures, they're generally very flush and have a low profile, which meets the needs of a lot of exterior applications for smooth surfaces. The latch also provides a handle and lever together, which is actuated by the push of a button. So when the lever drops to release compression, the handle rises and then can be used to access the application without the need of a separate handle or any other device. These are installed simply in a square mounting hole with a mounting bracket with 1 screw. And since they're all adjustable, they can be easily set during installation to give the exact amount of compression that your application needs. The third type of compression mechanism is a special form of lever latch I call the external mount lever. As you can see from the pictures, there's a very large handle which provides increased mechanical advantage. So if you need to compress a very heavy gasket on a very large door, or if your application is outside, it might see weather with snow or ice, you can use that handle to provide the mechanical advantage and break free of ice if needed. Since these are completely mounted on the exterior of your door and fixed panel, there are no through holes to allow either thermal leakage or anything on the inside to come to the outside. And because they're an over-center design, once the latch is closed and the lever handle is put fully down, it resists coming open through a vibration. Now, the fourth category of compression latches is called lift and turn. And like the name implies, the actuation of these is you lift the handle, which releases the shaft below and drops the cam below the keeper to release compression, and then you turn the handle 90 degrees to rotate that cam out of the way and release the door. Like the previous lever latches, lift and turn also contain a latch and handle in one application. So once you've raised that handle, it's easy to use to open and close the door as well. And because they're all adjustable grip, like I mentioned earlier, the amount of grip or compression you're giving the application can be set at the time of installation to whatever you feel your application needs. And these are typically highly durable latches and made from materials that are good and resistant to harsh environments and even marine environments, which may see salt water for corrosion purposes. Now, finally, the last category is called self-adjusting latches. And the difference with these between the other compression latches is that they can be adjusted for grip values while they're installed, while you're using them, and not just during installation. These latches are typically smaller in nature and are more economical for light-duty applications. And you can see from the pictures above that several are single hole mounted, where you can install them from the back of the door with a mounting nut on the surface, or 3-hole mounted where they can install it in the front of the panel and therefore be installed with screws or rivets or some other mechanism. But these are quick and economical and easy to install and usually used for light-duty applications. So now we've defined our 5 functional groups of compression latches. Let's talk about in greater detail each of these groupings together. So first, we talk about the quarter-turn compression latches. From the image on the left, you can see a complete latch assembly, which is comprised of a housing and a driver on top, and the housing is square to fit in a hole to prevent rotation. You also see a lock washer under the head of the compression latch and a mounting nut below the panel, which locks it into place. Below the latch, this is an adjustable grip version. You'll see a shaft extending out of the bottom with some hardware and an external lever arm, which we call a cam, which is what can be adjusted and will actually hold behind the keeper to compress that door and fixed panel together. In the middle image, you can see the latch being installed into that square panel prep hole. And again, it is square, so when you rotate the latch resists rotation itself. And you can also see a gasket being put up underneath the head of the latch to promote sealing. Then finally, on the far right, you can see the latch and a key inserted into it, which has turned the latch to provide full compression. It has pulled that cam forward into the keeper and has made that compression. So if this was a fixed version of a quarter-turn compression latch, instead of what's shown here, an adjustable version, rather than the shaft out of the bottom, you would simply see that same cam lever screwed into the bottom of the latch. Okay, so let's talk about some of the application considerations and benefits of a quarter-turn compression latch. As I mentioned earlier, these are the most common compression latches on the market, and they have a wide variety of sizes and materials and usages and shapes. On the right, you can see there's a single-hole version, and below that's a 3-hole version for mounting style and round holes instead of square holes. You can certainly see a wing knob version, which is hand-activated. That also has a key locking cylinder in it. And you can see a large T-handle, which is also used for easy hand access. And the nature of these latches are very simple and intuitive in that anyone can figure out a simple rotation action, while the latch itself provides those 2 functions of rotating the cam, then pulling it forward from that simple rotary action outside. And due to the construction of these latches, that simple or low input effort to actuate the latch really provides a high mechanical advantage in compression against the gasket and the keeper to make sure there's no vibration and your application is well sealed. These come in a wide variety of key or tool security options. So if you need something generic to your industry or very specific to your application only, that can be provided. And because of the wide variety of fixed and adjustable grips, clockwise and counterclockwise rotation, different materials and multiple head styles, a good chance you can find a quarter-turn compression latch to meet your specific application needs. Okay, in the next 2 slides, we're going to show some pictures of common applications that you might see a quarter-turn compression latch on. The first application on the left is a large freeze dryer, and you can see to the right of the access hatch, there's a mounted T-handle compression latch, which allows the user to grab it very simply and open without the need to worry about high security. You also see a bus up above there, and know fully well that compression latches are very popular on the inside and outside of buses because there's a lot of moving and shaking parts. So if you were to step onto a bus, you would notice, if you looked, on the walls and on the ceiling, many round compression latches holding those maintenance and access panels in place. And typically they're held in place with a tool actuated compression latch, which is common use in industry and not necessarily key coded, but not something a normal bus rider would carry in their pocket. You can also see a drive-through window, which has a compression latch to keep that closed when not in use, as well as a fuel cover on an EV bus, which is a simple small knob latch, relatively flush, but easy to provide access when you need to plug that bus in to either fuel it or to charge it. And then there's also a compression latch on the power enclosure to the right. And then a couple more interesting applications for a compression latch you might not normally think. One is used to keep the cowl cover on an outboard motor. And as you can see, a mobile flood barrier, there's multiple quarter-turn compression latches with a knob type actuator to be easily grasped by hand to hold this flood barrier in place in an opening. And then the more common usages you see on trains, whether it's locking out sensitive electronic equipment in a generator room on a train to keep the electrical equipment safe and passengers safe from that electrical equipment, or the fact that we use compression latches of this variety on lighting modules, electrical modules, and exterior skirts on trains which travel very quickly show their trust and durability in these types of industries. And that's the quarter turn compression latch family. So next, let's talk about the lever compression latches. Now, as I mentioned earlier, some examples of lever compression latches seen here, usually they're flush or low profile, and they contain an assembly of a handle in a housing attached to a lever arm, which is released by a button on top. There's hardware mechanism on the lever itself, which is an adjustment screw, which can be used to raise and lower that adjustment screw to provide more or less compression depending on your application needs, and a simple mounting bracket, which installs with one screw only. So very easy for installation. This is what you see in the middle image. Here we have a latch that is open, the lever handle is raised and the lever is up, and the latch is settled into the square compression latch with a gasket underneath the flange, which is hard to see in this image. And on the far right, you see this lever latch completely installed. The lever handle is put down, the adjustment screw is up against and compressing the keeper and providing compression for the gasket in a very flush profile. Okay, so talking more about lever latches. What are the benefits and styles? Again, on the right, you can see these are mostly flush latches. Some have a raised trigger to be easier to find, and some have a completely lowered or flush trigger. They come in different materials and sizes, and some are key locking for more advanced security. But again, the benefit of the list latch is that they're all adjustable, so the user can adjust the amount of compression at installation. And when you push the button, the handle pops up and the lever goes down. That handle can be used then to open and close the panel without need of a further mechanism installed. What's different about the lever latch from a quarter turn, which actually rotates a cam, these are strictly compression providing in a vertical motion only, which means there's no two surfaces rubbing together. And in fact, even the adjustment screw you can see in some of the images to the right have a rubber cap on top, which allows them to be a little more desensitive to rattling and not to scrape against whatever the keeper is they're pushing against. So again, easily adjustable via moving the screw up and down. And the security option is enhanced because we offer these in multiple tool and key locking versions, as well as versions with no lock core, which means the customer themselves may want to put a unique lock core into these, or buy one part number without a lock core, buy multiple types of lock cores separately, and install those as they see fit on their application. At Southco, we call this ability our key choice system, the ability to swap out different lock cores depending on your application's need. As noted, these come in highly sealed versions in case you're sensitive to water or dust getting into your application, and they're easy to install. All it takes is dropping the latch itself into a simple square panel preparation and mounting it with a mounting bracket and one screw only. Moving on to some pictures of these type of latches, we see that most of the applications that use them appreciate a flush exterior. In this case, we have several panels on the outside of an engine, one on the outside of a bus, one covering an engine, which are very flush and don't detract from the smooth surface and aerodynamics of the bus itself. And the same on the harvesting machinery below, where when you're going through a field or through a vineyard or through an orchard, you certainly don't want latches that protrude and can be caught or slapped by branches or different things in the field. The airport power unit you see in white in the middle above actually has lever latches on the front panel and the side, which prevent a flush exterior, but allow for simple opening with a simple push of a button. And that's also similar seen on the access panel for the off-highway machinery image below. I think one of the more unique applications is the spare tire access panel in the back of this police vehicle as well. Again, able to provide some security and be a flush to not catch on things as well. And finally, a couple more lever latch images. The one on the left is my favorite. Actually, one of our own employees took his family on a cruise boat and noticed that the large radar dome on top has an access panel underneath it, which included two of our lever latches. Lever latches are also popular on long, flat body and different trucks. And here you see a crane with several toolboxes that use a lever latch, as well as a food delivery box and a trailer latch below, both where the latch complements the smooth aesthetic of the exterior while providing easy access as well. And that is the family of lever compression latches. So what is next? Let's talk about the specific and unique version called external mount lever compression latches. As you can see from the left, these are comprised of very large handles and a tongue in a rotary mounting bracket and a separate keeper, which would be fastened to the non-moving panel. On the central image, you can see this large handle, which is affixed to the moving door, is bolted on from the bottom. And when the lever is raised, that tongue comes out of the keeper and allows the moving door to be released from the keeper and opened at the user's whim. And when closed, the tongue in the keeper is pushed forward by the handle being pushed down, which forces the latch to become drawn tightly shut and coplanar with the moving door with the fixed panel. And you can see compressing the gasket there as well. And that is the general construction of an external mount lever latch. Now, talking about some of the benefits, also, this latch is easy to see. It's a latch and handle together in one assembly, which makes it easy to use without extra hardware required to, once the enclosure is open, be able to grasp it and open it with a separate device. Due to the size of these, they provide high mechanical advantage and are really good for heavy-duty applications, where you frequently see these used on doors with very large gaskets or on the exterior freezer-type components or cabinets, where they might become frozen solid and you need to break that open with the high mechanical advantage. I mentioned earlier, these latches also are designed with over-center design. What that means is, as you're closing the latch, you'll eventually cross over the pivot point where further closing the latch wants to drop it down into a secondary stationary position. And because of that, it resists coming open by itself through vibration, unless, again, mechanical force is used to bring it back up over that over-center design point. The examples you see on the page here include a key locking version and a padlocking version, and two different mounting schemes. One, you can see the mounting holes to mount from the top. The other, it was mounted from the bottom. And again, why is this latch designed? Mostly it is to maximize the internal space in the application where your latch does not intrude into the application to get in the way of whatever sensitive equipment is on the inside. Now, as I mentioned, here are some images where these kind of latches are used, and typically used on very large applications with big doors and heavy ceiling, such as the cooling chamber on the left, or on the medical freezer on the right. And also they're sometimes used on doors to biohazard labs, where it's very important to make sure that whatever's on the inside of that door does not escape through to the outside. All right, moving forward then. Our next type of compression latch is called lift and turn. Now that name makes sense because these latches are uncompressed by lifting a handle, which drops the shaft lower, and then turning the handle to rotate the bottom lever arm or cam away from the fixed panel keeper, allowing the door to open. So on the left, you can see these lift and turn compression latches are basically made up of a housing with a handle on top, which is directly connected to the shaft, which sticks out the bottom below. On that shaft, you see an external lever arm or cam mounted with some adjusting hardware that allows you to move the cam up and down that shaft to have variable compression and adjustment during application installation. In the middle, you can see the simple installation of setting this latch into a panel prep, which is square in nature. And then on the right, you see a final completely installed latch with the handle rotated, the cam and down, the cam against the keeper and pulled up to provide compression. Okay, so what are the benefits of these type of lift and turn compression latches over the previous kinds we've discussed? Well, similar to a couple of these, they provide the latch and handle in one assembly, so you don't need, again, a separate door pull or handle on your application. They also employ an over-centered design, such that when they're closed, they resist coming open by definition. And as you see on the right, they come in two different versions, one more flush for a design aesthetic of that type of application, or one with varying sizes of handles that allow you to grasp easily to actuate and open your door. Certainly, they come in multiple versions of key locking or tool locking, and also support that key choice system that I mentioned earlier Southco offers. These latches have several applications as well, which I'll show some photos on the next page. But first, I want to show you a specific type of this. This is a unique version of a lift and turn compression latch, which is a T-handle in a cup. This provides the benefit of having an easily graspable handle to lift, but also meets the exterior needs of a flush application. These handles, of course, like all lift and turn latches, have an over-center design to resist opening. But again, the handles are large enough to use when application requires you wearing a glove, such as an outside application, which might be on a tractor or some other outside application as well. And it can be offered in both the cupped and non-cupped version. So if your application can actually mold in a cup feature to the panel itself, we can sell you the latch without a cup to fit in that access and then reduce the cost of your application. And like most of our compression latches, this come in locking and non-locking versions depending on your security needs. Now we have one more type of lift and turn compression latch, which is slightly unique. If any of you have been involved in the marine industry or been on a boat, chances are you've seen this style of latch. It's a very modern style to complement door or floor designs. It's very flush, which means you can walk over it without tripping. And it's highly sealed, which means it doesn't allow water to access. Now, since a lot of these latches come in contact with seawater or salt water, they're made from a high-grade stainless steel to prevent that corrosion and resist corrosion forming on the latch. Very simple to install with a round panel prep and a mounting bracket. And they meet requirements of many industries, including those third-party requirements I mentioned up front, NEMA and IP, which means they're sealed to keep water or the outside from the inside of your application. And really, you see most of these in the marine application industry, though I have seen some in others as well. So let's look at some application photos now. Certainly, on the upper left, you see truck with side toolboxes. In the bottom right, you see generators with access panels. Both those use this kind of latch in a cup. The T-handle, which keeps the outside application looking flush, gives the ability to lift and grasp with a gloved hand and turn to open the latch. Conversely, the engine access cover on the off-highway equipment on the bottom left, or the skirt latches on the train above, are flush latches to maintain the flush exterior aesthetic of those applications and not catch on things that they might pass by in their use. And finally, the round latch I showed you, which can be seen on the top surface of that fishing boat, is used to close several access panels, keep a very flush and pretty exterior, highly resistant to corrosion, but easy to pick up and use as required. Okay, and those are the lift and turn compression latch characteristics and applications. Okay, then next we have, and finally, we have these self-adjusting compression latches. And I mentioned up front, these are different than normal adjustable compression latches in the fact that they can be adjusted for compression during usage once they're installed. You can see from the picture on the left, it's a very simple latch with a housing, a trim nut to install on the top and a mounting nut on the bottom, and then a cam or lever arm which rides on that shaft and a spring. So as you turn and rotate to actuate this latch, that cam can swing basically a quarter turn until it runs into the housing side, and then further actuation draws that cam or lever arm forward to provide compression. Now the middle image shows a simple single hole mount version of this latch being installed from the bottom of the bottom of the door, and then screwed in tight with a trim nut on top and a mounting nut on the bottom, which is not seen in that image. On the far right, you see this latch completely installed and being actuated by a screwdriver. You can see that the lever arm or cam below has been rotated and pulled up against the fixed panel keeper, providing compression on the gasket. And again, the further you continue to turn or actuate that latch, the more that lever pulls forward, which basically means it's an infinitely adjustable amount of compression on that latch. Okay, some of the benefits of these are some of the most economical and simple latches to use and are really targeted at more light-duty applications that may not see a heavy working load or a lot of shock or vibration. They're very simple to understand. As you turn to actuate the latch, it starts to pull up compression. You can keep turning or actuating until you have the compression that gives you the right feel or the right amount of vibration resistance on your enclosure door. Simply put, one latch then, because they're adjustable, can be used on multiple applications. And you can see on the right, there are different ways to actuate the latches and to interact with them, whether it be a knob or a tool actuation. And there are two mounting schemes. The top two images there are single hole mounting schemes that can be installed from the rear of the door with a simple trim nut and mounting nut below, or a 3-hole mount if you'd rather install your application or latch on the top of your moving door. And then you can use screws or other types of installation methods into the top of the panel. Now, a very specific type of self-adjusting latches we call the spring series. And this is very similar to what I just showed you, other than on the bottom, rather than having a cam and a lever arm which rides up and down on a spring, the device that actually provides compression is a piece of ramped spring wire. So as you actuate or turn the top of the latch, rather than a cam pulling forward, it rotates this ramped spring wire, which forces the higher portion of the spring to engage the keeper and provides compression in that fashion. Now, these are very durable and not sensitive to dropping panels or lifting panels off the application. And they're good for that method. And the spring steel is very tolerant of that rough handling. And they're all 3-hole mounted, and they support mounting then via rivets or studs, or even have versions they can weld on to top of metal for greater flexibility. So let's take a look at a couple images for these. Just a couple simple applications you might see in the field. On the left, you see a small single-hole mount adjustable compression latch holding shut the front panel or door of a mailbox. And on the right, you can see a 3-hole mount spring type latch holding shut, or in this case, open, a mobile door on a compressor. All right, so those are the 5 different types of application functions of compression latches and some application examples. Let's do a quick review of what we talked about. First of all, we remember that compression latches are simple mechanical devices which hold a door, typically a moving door, and a non-moving panel together to resist vibration and rattling noises, as well to provide sealing of the application or compression gasket to keep the outside out from their sensitive electronics or application on the inside of the enclosure. The quarter turn latch takes one simple rotary motion and translates that into 2 motions. 1, the quarter turning of a cam, and 2, the pulling that cam forward to provide compression. This is the most common compression latch and has the biggest variety and probably the best sealing of most compression latches on the market. Second were the lever latches, which again you can see from the image are mostly flush and provide a latch and handle in one assembly. And since they're all adjustable, the installation person can change the amount of compression provided at that time. All have a simple push button release and are easy to install with a simple 1 panel prep hole, a mounting bracket, and 1 screw. The external mount lever compression latches were similar, except they mount entirely on the outside of an application, and due to their large handles provide significant mechanical advantage, along with an over-center design, which once they're closed, really resists opening during vibration. And they come in locking and non-locking versions and are really used on large doors with heavy gaskets or in applications that might see the high cold outside and become frozen with ice. The 4th bucket was lift and turn compression latches, which, like the name implies, you lift the handle up, then you turn the handle to swing the application free, which moves the lever arm out of the way of the keeper. You see this come in flush varieties, NT handle, and other handle varieties with the mostly flush construction. And they're all adjustable as well. So at the time of installation, the amount of compression can be adjusted then or over time later. And due to their more rugged construction and durable materials, they can be used in more harsh environments, such as the off-highway industry or construction, or even marine applications. And finally, the last bin of compression latches were the self-adjusting type, which are smaller in nature and more suitable for lower light-duty applications, but very simple to use and install. And unlike the other types of compression latches, by further actuating the latch once installed, I can, on the spot, change the amount of compression by actuating it further and further. And we have 2 versions of these, some which install from behind the panel and some which install from the front of the panel, allowing for greater flexibility in the installation method. Okay, so we've now had a review of the types of compression latches and their mechanisms. Let's talk about what it takes to design in a compression latch. What are some of those criteria or questions we talk to our customers about to make sure we can define the actual compression latch part number they need. So in general, we need to ask our customers what the environment the latch will be in. Will it be outdoors or indoors? Latches that sit typically indoors don't come into contact with a lot of harsh environmental factors and can be chosen from metals of a lesser capability and not so strong against things like compression and against things like shock load. Latches that may sit on the outside, which see more of the weather and wind and rain and higher temperature swings, might want a more sturdy metal, such as steel or stainless steel, to be able to resist those environments or resist any kind of exposure to UV lights. We also need to ask, what kind of sealing is required? Do you have sensitive equipment on the inside where water intrusion is a problem? And we need to make sure that nothing can get inside, whether it be wind or dust. And we also need to ask, what kind of security is required for application? I mentioned earlier, if you're entering your application on a daily basis, every minute by minute, you might want no security, a simple non-locking version to be able to get in and out quickly. But if your application is in a non-monitored location, such as outdoors, you may want high security, whether it be an industry standard tool or something that can't be found on the internet or in a hardware store, a specifically coded key to your lock, just like your car key is coded to your car uniquely. Another important question is to ask, what is the thickness of your door? The latches are different sizes, and some can fit through larger panel thicknesses or door thicknesses than other, and that might help make a compression latch selection as well. Also, ergonomics are important. You might ask the customer, how do you want to interact with your latch? Do you want it to be flush and hard to see and hide the access points? Or do you want it to be an obvious lever or knob that sticks out and easy to grab and open on the spur of the moment? Also might ask, what level of adjustability do you need to see? I mentioned previously that if the latch is fixed, has no adjustability, then maybe your manufacturing tolerances are very good and you can use this more economical kind of latch. But if you're worried about your application sag or gasket set or the need to change compression over time, you might want to choose an adjustable latch, which then can be used for different application and grip distances with the same part number. And finally, something we usually don't think about is what design or aesthetic does your application have? For example, if you're on a smooth and shiny surface, you may want your latch to be smooth and shiny. Or if you're on a matte black application surface, you want your latch to be matte black as well. So these represent some of the application questions you might ask your customer to help them define the exact application compression latch need they have. Okay, we've covered a lot of information so far, but I want you to know if we have not covered something that's important to you, feel free to visit our website at southco.com. And by selecting products and then latches, you can come to a pop-up menu and select compression latches to find more information. This will expose the length and breadth of our product line, as well as offer more information about compression latches in general. And I will mention one more useful resource. Also, under the resources section of our website, you can click on the online catalog. Why I mention that is that if you choose the compression latch tab of this online electronic catalog, you will find the pages you see exposed here, which are a simple table with all the compression latch variations and several pieces of criteria we've discussed, which allows a quick, simple, one-page look to determine the differences and similarities between different types of latches and how to pick one that might meet your application based on those criteria. Okay, so in quick summary, whether you're trying to stop the noise and vibration from rattling panels or seal out the outside environment from the inside of your latch through compressing a gasket, there's a long line of compression latches that can meet your needs, and a variety of them are available on southco.com. Now, I want you to know if there's any further information you need concerning what we've just talked about, or if any other compressions about our gasket compression, our compression latch range, please feel free to email me at jcoulter@southco.com. If you have any other general inquiries, you feel free to direct those to our excellent customer service team using info@southco.com. Or if you prefer to use the chat function on our website, that can be found at www.southco.com. That's the end of our compression latch presentation. I want to thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was great. We do have time for a few questions. First of all, there's this one. What are the common modifications requested on compression latches?
That's a great question. First of all, a lot of the common modifications we receive deal with security. A lot of customers want their applications to have a unique driver head style, which may not be common in what's offered today. And therefore, a lot of the modifications we get will be to implement a specific tool function that they use in their industry that's not readily available. Also, we see a lot of our customers requesting specific key codes for their locking applications. Similar to your car, a lot of applications may want one key to start their car, open their glove box, open the outside door, and open their trunk. And a lot of customers want us to code our latches to their unique key usages so they can have the same common key among their applications. And I would say a third general application requirement we receive is to change the length of our cam. And if you see what I'm holding in my hand is a compression latch with this cam or lever arm. Some keepers are further away than our standard lengths. So we also offer longer lever arms to allow the application to the latch to reach the keeper on their application. So those are kind of three common areas, whether it be security or the cam length that we tend to match for our customers.
Thank you. Next one. How do I determine what material I need for my application?
Well, that also is a good question, Paul. A lot of that comes down to some of the criteria we discussed previously. For example, if your latch will be in an external environment where it'll be subject to wind and rain and harsh environmental conditions, you may want to choose a more sturdy material, such as a heavy metal like steel, or if you're in the application environment that sees salt water, you might want to use stainless steel, which is more resistant to corrosion. If your application's on the inside of an enclosure or a building, let's say, and you don't have the harsh environment, maybe it's okay to use a lighter material, whether it be a plastic or aluminum or zinc. So those are also ways to determine a material. Another application requirement is the load it'll see. If your application is going to see heavy shock loads or lots of heavy vibration, you want a material that doesn't fatigue and can last over time. And that may speak to using something like steel or stainless steel, as opposed to more common materials like zinc, which are very durable but don't last quite as well in the application, heavy-duty applications. And I think a third and probably very important consideration in choosing materials for applications is galvanic corrosion. And all that means when you have dissimilar metals together, like a zinc latch or a stainless steel latch on an aluminum enclosure, and you have a presence of electrolytes like water, corrosion occurs more readily when the materials don't match. So some of our customers, if they're using an aluminum enclosure, will request an aluminum latch, and those compatible materials don't tend to see galvanic corrosion as much.
Okay. And this one, kind of an important one. How can I make sure my compression latches are secured properly?
Very good question. As you know, some of the latches I discussed earlier are a lever and handle together. So when the latch is open, the handle pops up, and it's very easy to see from a distance or close up that your latch is not secure. But there are other latches, like some of the self-adjusting latches, which are smaller, or the quarter turn latches, which all you see is a head sticking out of your application. And it's very hard to tell from a distance whether it's been rotated shut or rotated open. So we have at Southco invented a couple of interesting designs. I have a couple to share with you here today, which provide extra information beyond compression to answer that very question. Is my latch closed and secure or not? I'm going to show you an example here of a simple quarter turn compression latch with an accessory on top called a bistable cover. Bistable means there's a hinge which forces it to pop open or pop closed. There's no middle ground. So you can see that when the latch is closed, this cover, which has a fin inside, can nestle into the latch head and be completely closed. But if I were to open that latch and choose a common key to rotate that latch slightly open, which I'm going to do now, you'll now see that the driver notch is no longer in alignment with the fin, and I can't close that. It just pops open bistably, which means with this accessory, a simple add-on feature, I can see from a distance whether or not that latch is secure or not because the cover stands up proud. And one other interesting example of a compression latch which provides further information than just compression, we call this our visual indicator latch. You can see it's similar to the latch I just showed you, but has a larger head. And as I start to actuate it, which I will do now with the key, you will see something happen to that head. Some red wings come out. And that provides the extra information to a customer from a distance or close up that, hey, if the red wings are out, that latch is not secure. And these red wings are really the same material used on stop signs, and they reflect at night. So if you're shining a flashlight on something, you can also very easily see the reflective surface at night. So again, if you imagine having to check 100 latches down the length of a train, it's very important for safety and security to make sure those latches are secure. Something that provides extra visual information on the latch status is very important. So those are just two examples of how a little bit of extra design work can provide extra information on a common compression latch.
Fantastic, thank you. Unfortunately, that's all the questions we have time for today. As I said earlier, any questions anyone in the audience has asked that we haven't had time to answer, we will pass those on to Southco and they will get back to you offline. And with that, it really just remains for me to say thank you so much to Jonathan for a great presentation today. And thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.